Hello and welcome to episode 12 of Mathghamhain Morsels. Today is going to be Porkchops, rice, and mushroom soup in the Simple Comforts episode. And this is again going to be one of those dishes that isn't the prettiest, but it has fantastic flavor. So I'm going to start out by slicing up some mushrooms, just to liven up the mushroom soup that I'm going to be using later on, which is of course going to be Campbell's cream of mushroom. So, with this dish, it's one of those standard stick to your ribs, good old fashioned Minnesota hot dishes, and it is absolutely delicious. I just have a selection of mushrooms here. You can keep the stem on, take the stem off, and I'm just going to third these mushrooms, sometimes quarter if I get a real big one like this one. Otherwise, it's just going to be thirded. On a small one, might be half. But what I'm going to do is slice these up, and then I'm going to be throwing these into a hot pan with some lard in order to kind of caramelize up. For the stalks, you can just cut them in half if you want, or you can leave them whole. I'm just going to cut it in half. Or rather, I just cut it in half. So, this is, like I said, a really good stick-to-your-ribs Minnesota hot dish. It just requires mushrooms, pork chops, rice, and the Campbell's cream of mushroom soup. Once these are all sliced up, I'll be able to show you the rest of this dish. And once again, this is something that you can really clean up these mushrooms if you want, or you can just kind of brush them off, make sure that you get most of the dirt off. Either way works perfectly fine. I pretty much just brushed these clean, made sure that there wasn't any obvious dirt. That stem doesn't look very good, so just took it off a little bit. And this is a small one, so this is going to be one that just have. For this meal, this is something that I grew up eating, especially in football season. I would come home and I'd just eat a massive plate of this. Absolutely fantastic, really easy to scale up and down. All you do is you increase the number of pork chops, you increase the mushroom soup, and add some more mushrooms, cook up some more rice, and you can feed an army with this. Well, I'll catch you guys in the kitchen. Okay, so welcome to the kitchen. I've just thrown in a little bit of lard into my steel pan here. You'll notice I'm not using my cast iron, and that's just because when you're making pork chops, rice, and mushroom soup, the condensed soup is an absolute bitch to get out of a cast iron pan. Kind of sticks to the sides a little bit. So I'm just using a steel pan, stainless steel. Really good option. I also have my oven preheated to 350 degrees. And once I get everything sauteed up here and the pork chops nice and caramelized with those Maillard reactions on the surface, nice and seared off, and the mushroom soup dump in, I'll be able to move this to the oven to finish up. So, into this lard, I'm going to be throwing the mushrooms. And I'm just going to toss them around, make sure that they get a nice caramelized coating, just start to turn brown. And I'm using lard just so that it can absorb some more of that beef flavor. I love reinforcing flavors when I can. So, reinforcing and livening up that cream of mushroom soup with the potatoes, with the mushrooms. I'm not sure why I said potato. With the mushrooms just sauteed up on the stovetop. Get that fresher mushroom flavor with the deepness of the roasted mushroom and liven up the cream of mushroom soup a little bit. So just keep these moving every so often, but after you flip them around a little bit, make sure that they're all in contact with the bottom of the pan. You can let them go for a few moments. One thing that a lot of people don't know is it is really hard to burn mushrooms, and it's just because of the moisture content within mushrooms. So, this is a point where if you get interrupted and you leave the mushrooms on for a few moments without paying attention, don't worry. They probably won't be burned unless you come back like an hour later. That's a bit extreme, but a few moments here and there, they won't even realize it. So, well, you'll just come back and they'll be nice and deep golden brown. But let these sear up, caramelize on the outside, toss them around, and they'll turn out absolutely delicious. And this is something that you don't really need to worry all that much about. Just adds a little bit brighter of a flavor, more earthy and fresher taste to it. So as you're going, just toss them around. I had one escape, but don't worry, I caught it, so I'll be tossing that one back in here in a moment. But yeah, it's smelling absolutely amazing in here. Just that nice mushroom earthy scent filling the air. You can see some good coloration on the mushrooms already. And that's what I'm looking for. I just want all the sides, all the cut faces to get that lovely, lovely color. If you see one that keeps on flipping the same way, just go in and flip it. I had a couple that were doing that for me right here. And this, like I said, I'm going to be using the Campbell's Cream of Mushroom Soup. Those will go in after I finish with the mushrooms and after I finish searing off the pork. Which, I'm calling this Pork Chops Rice and Mushroom Soup just because that's what it's always been called, but I'm not technically using standard pork chops. I didn't buy them as pork chops. I bought a half pork loin and I sectioned it up, and I'm going to be using some of those sections. And that's one of the things that makes this really easy to scale, because you can just get a large, cheap pork loin roast, slice it up into the thickness that you want, sear it off, and you can feed an entire family on the cheap with this. It's absolutely amazing. I love this dish. It was something that my grandma cooked for me when she came down to take care of me for a while when I was younger, and there was nothing better after a long football practice or a hard game than coming home and finding pork chops, rice, and mushroom soup just cooking away, getting that beautiful smell as I just walk into the place. So, as you can see, the mushrooms are getting a nice, lovely golden brown, so I'll be taking them out before too much longer, and I'll be throwing the pork chops into here. But just going to give them a couple seconds longer, just a couple moments, make sure that all the faces get that beautiful golden brown. And because I'm not using cast iron, I do have the pan set to a bit of a higher temperature, so most of the time when I'm using cast iron, it's set to medium-low. This time, it's set up at medium-high, and that's just because this steel pan doesn't keep the heat as wonderfully as cast iron does. So these mushrooms are just going onto the cutting board that I originally had them on, and they're going to wait off to the side as I continue on with the actual star of the dish, the pork chops. Just want to make sure I get all of them out. And all those lovely little baked on bits of brown in the bottom of the pan, that's going to add so much flavor. So I'm just going to continue using this pan, and I'll be good to go. And in goes my pork. Like I said, the pork is just cut off of a absolutely beautiful pork loin roast. I won't have quite enough room in the pan for all the pieces right away, but as they cook, I'll be able to move them around, get them in the right area, and get this additional piece that I have off to the side in. Again, just like with my cast iron, if it's really sticking, I'm not going to fight it. I'm just going to let it sit, because once it sears up properly, it'll come right off. But I think I am going to be adding a little bit more of the lard, just to make it a bit easier. And again, it just adds more of that porky flavor, which you can't go wrong with more of a pork flavor in a pork dish, can you? I don't think so. So, again, I'm looking for those beautiful Maillard reactions on the surface of the meat, which is the reaction of the fat, the heat, the meat, and normally I'd be adding salt, but because I'm using the cream of mushroom soup from Campbell's, I don't want to have it get too salty as it reduces, so I'm just going to have the pork without salting it in here. You can see the beautiful golden brown color on that. And just test the pieces. If they don't want to pull up, don't force them. But if they come up, give them a flip, see how they look, and that one looks good as well. So flip those over, give that first one a go again. Yep, that's absolutely beautiful. And I'm just going to keep an eye on this. Can't quite add in that other piece yet, but probably after I flip this piece I'll have just enough room in the bottom of that pan. Might. But once these are all beautifully golden brown all the way around, you aren't looking to cook them all the way through, because this is something that you can make ahead of time. I'm going to be cooking this for about 4 hours or so. So it's going to get cooked through while it's in the oven. This is just to get that lovely sear on the pork. Allow those Maillard reactions to happen. Actually cooking it through is going to wait until the mushroom soup is in, and then once that goes in, that's when it's going to be put into the oven at 350 degrees. One thing that I should make note of, if you're cooking for just a few hours, then 350 works really well. So 350, I'd say, in between 2 and 4 hours, really good temperature. If you're cooking for a long period of time, so let's say you do this first thing in the morning and then you head off to work and you want to be able to have this when you come home, I would put it in at 200, 225, maybe 250 at the top side, but I'd put in a bit more liquid than I'm going to for this. And then just when I come home, I'd flip it on to 350, perhaps up to 400, let it get a bit more caramelization before I actually serve it up. It'll be absolutely fantastic that way. But I'm cooking it for 4 hours, so I'm going to do 350 for 4 hours. This is a dish that you can make early on, throw it in a slow cooker rather than cooking it all in a pan like I'm going to be. And slow cooker works beautifully for this, especially if you're cooking for a large group and you have good sized slow cooker. Throw in a few good sized family cans of cream of mushroom, and you're good to go. So, you can see the pork chops are looking absolutely beautiful. Just want a little bit more coloration on this one. The others, they're good to go. So I'm just shifting them around the pan to make sure that they aren't at the hottest part. I don't want to end up cooking the outside a bit too much. You want to keep it a golden brown. You don't want it going a dark brown or, heaven forbid, burning. But that's looking good now. So, what I'm going to be doing here in a moment is I'm going to be adding in my mushrooms and then adding in my cream of mushroom soup. Mushrooms go in first with all that lovely juice that kind of dribbles out. And to this I'm going to be adding 4 smallish cans of cream of mushroom, which comes out to about 1 of the large family-sized cans. With this, you want to get a good amount out. If you don't get all of the cream of mushroom out, that's not too big of a worry. It can be a bit of a pain that doesn't want to come out all the way. So what I recommend doing is, I'm going to need to grab a knife for this after scraping the lid. So I'll grab a knife, kind of scrape out the inside of the can, and then just run around the edge with a knife. As you try to dump it, you'll get most of it out. If you're doing a long cook for it, starting before you go to work and eating it after you come home from work, I'd recommend then definitely kind of rinsing the can a little bit. Just put a little bit of water, not a lot, a little bit of water, swish it around, mix the mushroom soup in, pour the entire content in, because you'll want the additional liquid. It'll turn out amazing though. So, just add in your cans one by one. And sorry for you not being able to hear the lovely sizzle. I'll have to get a lapel mic at some point so that you can hear a bit better. And also, I was an idiot when I was recording this, so you aren't even listening to me as I'm cooking at the moment. You're listening to me after the fact because I had my microphone muted, so this is voiceover afterwards. Hopefully it's syncing up rather well, and you guys don't mind it terribly. It was bubbling and sizzling beautifully as I was cooking this, though. And the smell from the pork and the mushrooms and that lard that I was cooking them in and the mushroom soup as it started to hit the hot pan, oh my god, it was fantastic. Just took me right back to when I was younger. And like I said, I was getting this after football games or practices. Oh, it is really good stick to your ribs Minnesota cooking. So, once you get all the mushroom soup in, which can take a bit if you're using the small cans, or if you're using just one of the large family cans or 2 of the large family cans, it's a lot faster done by now most of the time. Once all that's in, though, you're going to want to stir up everything in there just to make sure that the mushroom soup is in and around everything, that the pork chops aren't all in the same spot in the pan, the mushrooms aren't all in the same spot in the pan. You want to get it married together. Just mix it up. And it will be fantastic. I do want to get as much of the mushroom soup into this as I possibly can, though, because a 4-hour cook will cause a substantial amount of volume loss. It'll reduce really nicely. And that's what you want. Like I said, it's going to make it fairly salty, but the rice balances it out, mellows out all the flavors, rounds them out, gives it a bit more body. And is absolutely delicious. So, like I said, just kind of mix it up, make sure that you scrape the bottom a little bit with your chosen utensil, in this case my spatula, because you want to make sure that all those little stuck-on bits from earlier end up coming up with the addition of the liquid. Once you give it a quick toss and going over, though, it's good to go straight into the oven. You just want to get as much of it off the spatula as you can. And this is just going to bubble away for a couple hours in the oven. Well, 4 hours in the oven at 350 degrees. And it'll be absolutely amazing. I'll be back, and when you next hear me, it will actually be video recording me and not editing me, so here's looking forward to that. But yes, I'll see you guys when I come back from letting this cook, and you guys can see the finished result. See you then, guys. Okay, and we're back after about 4 hours of this being in the oven, roasting away. Absolutely fantastic. This is what it looks like. Like I said, it's not a pretty dish, but oh god, the flavors. So, all I did was take that pork chop and mushroom soup combination and dump it on top of some white rice, in this case a jasmine rice, which I made in my rice cooker, just 1 part rice to 1.5 parts water, and it came out beautifully fluffy rice. Use whatever your rice cooker recommends and whatever your rice recommends, or if you aren't using a rice cooker, you can do it on stovetop. I just prefer using the rice cooker, it's a lot easier. And I make a lot of rice. So, the mushroom soup has definitely thickened up a lot, as you can see. That pork just falling apart. Absolutely delicious. The rice is a necessary component of this because when it concentrates down, the flavors can almost be overwhelming, but the rice just cuts back on that. And rounds the flavors out. Cuts back on the saltiness of the concentrated soup. And like I said, this is just absolutely amazing fall and winter food. Perfect after a really active day where you built up a massive appetite. Have this just going in your oven when you come home, come back, plate it up. Really easy to scale up and down. All you do is you add some more pork, add some mushroom, or more mushroom soup, and make more rice. Boom, you can feed an army. So this is it for this episode of Mathghamhain Morsels. Pork chops, rice, and mushroom soup. Try it, you guys. It is absolutely delicious. And it is just good old stick-to-your-ribs cooking. So to leave off, experiment. Try new things. If you haven't had this before, try it on a nice cold day. When you need something to warm you up and just give you energy. This, you might end up in a slight food coma immediately after eating it, but give it a little bit, and this will keep you running for an entire day. It is fantastic. But yeah, try different things. Try different flavors. But don't forget, comfort food is still comfort food, and it's amazing for that. Have a good one all.